very dedicated to her spiritual master. She set the standard of how to really surrender to the spiritual master's desire. And that was, of course, book distribution. And then she also showed us what it meant like to leave this planet. I believe she was probably the first ISKCON devotee to leave this world in Vrindavan Dham. As far as I know, I could be corrected, but I'm thinking that she was one of the first Prabhupada disciples to leave this planet in Vrindavan. And whenever I think about that, how brave she really was to do that. A lot of times when I'm coming from Delhi and going to Vrindavan, you go down the Bhaktivedanta Marg, and I always think like this. I can't, it just happens that it seems like it's a long road, because one day, if we're fortunate enough, if we have the gumption and the desire, we may be able to go down that road in a nice little car, and we know that we will not come back out. Just think about that. That's pretty intense. That is something that is really, I think most of us that are in seniors here, we think like that. Is there going to be a day that I'll be fortunate enough to be in a car driving down Bhaktivedanta Marg, down that street to Krishna Balaram Mandir, and never will I ever get in a car again and drive out. So you can go there for a visit, but can you stay? And that's the question here. And I think that she set the standard. She was the first devotee in ISKCON to be able to do that, and how brave she was to accomplish that feat. So a lot of us here, we're glorifying Gauri for those things, that she was such a strong character, great devotee, strong personality, and she really wanted to please her spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And I've got a few things that I'm just going to read about how sincere she was. She was so sincere in her endeavor that Srila Prabhupada recognized it. Now that's pretty amazing. Can you imagine if you're recognized by your spiritual master, like Radhanath Swami? What do you feel like? Ecstatic, don't you? Yeah. You think, oh my God, my life is now really something, worth something. So Srila Prabhupada recognized her devotion and her sincere desire to please him by the activity of this book distribution. And then not only that, but she also carried it through her life, meaning that she was focused on it, and even when it was her time to leave this planet, she tried to follow her spiritual master. Prabhupada came to Vrindavan. He came to leave to leave the planet, and she decided that she was going to do the same thing. So, a real hero. Gauri Dasi ki jai. Yeah, so I'm just going to read a couple of things. They're going to go back and forth. There'll be a few devotees that'll say a few things. But that's a little bit of the history at that particular time of Gauri Dasi. I'm going to start it out by reading something that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Gauri Dasi, thanking her for her devotional service. My dear Gauri Dasi, please accept my blessings. I'm in due receipt of your later letter dated January 23rd, 1975, and have noted the contents. You are a very expert book distributor, so I do not want you to give it up altogether. If you like, you can also do some painting, but you should still distribute books 2 days out of the week, at least. Always strictly follow all the rules and regulations, rising early, attending Mangalarti and classes, and without fail, chanting 16 rounds daily. This will make you strong in Krishna consciousness, which is the most essential thing. Always be engaged 24 hours a day in the service of Krishna and be happy. I hope this meets you in good health. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Yes, so Prabhupada recognized her endeavor. I was also in the association of Gauri in those years, especially 1975. I was with her in Chicago O'Hare Airport. I was distributing books with her. And she was considered to be like the, senior mata. So we were very humble. We paid our obeisances to her, and she was very sweet. She took that particular position with us, and she tried to help us. She tried to train us how and what we should do, how we should speak to people, and how to get donations. And she would, say that to us regularly. So I would be with her in the airport, in the concourse at O'Hare Airport, distributing books. And then in the evening, she would actually come back to the ashram there, and she would paint. She was a painter, an artist. And that was a soothing thing for her. So not only was she a book distributor, but then she was an artist. And she was quite good at it. I believe one of her paintings was actually put in a Chaitanya Charitamrita. I believe it's the big picture of Lord Jagannath. I think she was the one that painted that. And they put that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But that's not all. Because not only was she a book distributor, a painter, artist, but she was also a pujari. And that was astonishing. She could do all these different things. And I think that was really the mood in those early days of Krishna consciousness. You learned how to do everything. You didn't just do one thing and specialize, but you actually really learned so many things that you should do. Because, of course, there weren't as many devotees in the temple. I know in the Denver temple when Nakatma and I and my brother Vyapi joined the temple, it was like, oh wow, now there's 10 of us. There's only 7 before, or 8. But then when we came, it was like, oh my God, fantastic. Now there's 10 or 11 of us here in the temple. And you can imagine all the things that you need to do in a temple. So many different activities, and so it was a big boon to have 3 devotees join at the same time. So in those days, you learned how to do everything. You not only cut up the vegetables in the kitchen, but you cleaned the kitchen, you cleaned the prasadam room, you served out prasadam, you cleaned the temple, and it had to be done by 10:30 a.m. You got in a van, went downtown, did Harinam till the lunch rush, hopped back in the van, went back to the temple, took prasadam, kind of hung out for about an hour or so, back in the van to get the rush hour for people going home in downtown and doing Harinam. That was the early days of Krishna consciousness, for me at least. I'm sure it was like that for a lot of devotees in the early days. So you learn how to do everything. And it was very important because that's how the temple functioned. That's how it actually went on. So I'd like to read a little something here about Gauri Dasi and as a pujari. The script is a little small, but I'll try. This is on July 19th, 1971. Srila Prabhupada was a world traveler, but he was always a humble Vaishnava. He said full attention to what we were doing. He paid full attention to what we were doing. Our new Radha Krishna deities and the 20 devotees who were ready to be initiated by him. During this time, Gauri Dasi was the head pujari, so she was also head pujari. She sat beside Prabhupada during installation of Radha Gopi Jana Vallabha. As usual, there were tense moments. The clothes for the deities didn't fit, and Gauri had to cut open their seams and do a last-minute sewing. This was done while the audience was watching. Somehow she pulled it through, and Prabhupada was patient. So you can imagine this installation. And the fit didn't fit, so she had to, she was a seamstress also, so she had to fix the clothes so they'd fit. Karanda Prabhu from Los Angeles performed the fire yajna. Prabhupada told the Indians attending, according to Jiva Goswami, the boy can do the yajna because he chants Hare Krishna. Gauri finally made the clothing to fit the deities. Prabhupada said that Krishna should now be placed on the altar. So this is what, you have to be ready to do anything. And there she was doing this. So that kind of gives you a perspective of her ability. And not only does distribute Prabhupada's books, but she was a pujari, a head pujari. Took a lot of skill on her part. I'd like to also read something here that Gauri wrote. It was a poem that she wrote, a very powerful poem, so I thought I'd share that with all of you. This is Gauri's poem. Nanda Nanda, O Krishna, enjoyer of this Dham, Vrindavan Vilasini with your brother Balaram. In sequin shorts and turbaned, your chadar blowing free, with handsome chest and arms like snakes, allowing me to see. You stand supremely joyful, watching all who come before. You're personally controlling them to love you more and more. This is your village where you play with all your cowherd friends. And everyone here loves you, free from the doubts that Maya sends. So I have also tried to follow his desire, thinking to leave my body here. I came to your feet night after night in my wheelchair and cried at your beauty and the sweetness of your kirtan. And you laughed at me and encouraged me to go on chanting your name unlimitedly and hearing about your special garden from, golden form, so that I could fully take your shelter. You kept me in that weakened condition for so many weeks, barely able to finger my beads at times, and always waiting for the time when you would pull my last breath away from me. I was so embarrassed and ashamed before you, not loving your name and not remembering you, and wanting to serve you, and still you would always make me cry to see you. You are so incredibly beautiful and at the same time so funny, such a trickster. So you squeezed your name into my stone heart, in spite of my mind trying to hold the fort and remain supreme. You actually entered and destroyed my mind's powerful asanas, the supreme enjoyer, and you are gradually making your place here in my heart, even though I'm not helping you at all. In fact, I try to ignore you, but then when I see you again, you haunt me like a ghost, and you won't let me sleep at night for remembering your blackish form. And then you make me write about you. You are so amazing. I still don't believe you. I still don't believe you are personally doing all this. I was a pilgrim, tired and ill, who came before your lotus feet and saw your eyes that smiled at me and forced my heart to feel. From Maya's heavy bondage, which inspired in me one doubt, that you were not a person who would care to pull me out. Your great devotee called you here and worshipped you himself. He said, now let us go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Krishna and Balaram. Gauri Dasi, 1986. Wow, very powerful. This is when she was in her last days on this particular planet. A little something on the bright side. I'd like to read a little something that Srila Prabhupada wrote also to Gauri, and it's very, very nice. Prabhupada writes, your Sankirtan reports are very encouraging, especially that one girl, Gauri Dasi, who has set an all ISKCON women's record of 108 big books. This is very wonderful. Formerly, this would not have been possible, but by Krishna's grace, everything is becoming possible. Encourage them all to increase more and more. This book distribution is the essence of our mission. So, a little bit on that. Gauri took that very seriously. It was her mission, lifelong mission. She even thought of so many different ways to distribute Prabhupada's books. These days, we're distributing books, that our devotees are distributing books at colleges, universities, with book tables. And they've become very powerful process of Sankirtan. But Gauri was doing that way back then. She would take book tables and she would go to like a DMV, you know, where you get your driver's license. Yeah. And she would set up and not only that, but she really had a very elaborate process. She would have, like behind her on the table, she would have a whole, picture, a nice big picture made of the sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. And she would work on that particular table. And she was huge at it. And she was so determined. Anyone that came in her association would immediately have to hear something about book distribution. Those ladies, I'm sure, that know her from way back then, I think that they would also agree that she was constantly discussing this book distribution. She would have classes, and if you would go to her class, she'd have several ladies around her, new devotees, and of course, older devotees. And she would preach about book distribution. And I remember that sometimes in the airport, if things were slow, and you were beside her, she'd immediately start telling us about how sorry she was of the conditioned souls and how they needed this Krishna consciousness movement. And that was very uplifting for us, because when you're out there distributing books, that's a hard thing to think about, to feel sorry for somebody out there. Because everybody says no. No one wants to talk to you, literally. They just want to run right by you. If they saw you, they'd run the other way. And here she is in the middle of a concourse, and she's telling us, yes, they're conditioned souls. They need Krishna. They're suffering like anything. And then as a new devotee, you're watching somebody go by with the girlfriend or boyfriend, and they're laughing and chatting and have a good time, and they're off to some vacation, and they're dressed properly, and they look so good and happy, and here you are, one little lone soul in this concourse trying to give them Krishna consciousness, and they don't want it. They absolutely do not want it. And so when you would hear that from her, it kind of would wake you up. You think, oh, that's right. They're suffering like anybody else. It may be this is a mirage. They think they're happy. And she would wake us up like this. And then after that, we'd begin back into the fire of book distribution. So, yes. Okay. I'd like to ask if anyone would like to say a few words. Acharya Prabhu.
Haribol, by the time I joined in '73 in New York, Mother Gauri was already a legend. Because as Subhas has been pointing out, she set the standard for distributing Prabhupada's books. In the list of 26 qualities of the devotee, one of them is a devotee's grave. So Mother Gauri was the emblem of gravity. The kind of person that as soon as you saw her, you knew don't approach with anything nonsense. Just a very grave, very serious person. But at the same time, as Subhas pointed out, she was very brave. Not only brave in leaving this world in Vrindavan under the circumstances that she did, aftermath of cancer, but she was always brave. Again, she set the standard in bravery in New York, at least, how to approach the conditioned souls on the street. It was not easy in those days. Although most people on the street are weird, they thought we were weird. Especially going out dressed the way we normally dress, which is what she did. She didn't go out undercover. She went out dressed in her sari. And so it was not easy to approach even common people on the street in New York, what to speak of the elite, the business guys with their ties and whatnot. You had to be really brave to approach such people. So she set the standard of how to approach, what to say, and so I appreciated whatever little time I had with her. I'm not a Sankirtan devotee, book distributor by nature, but having association with great souls like her in New York at the time made me understand why Prabhupada was producing his books and the importance of doing that, which is where I dedicated most of my time to producing Prabhupada's books, and the importance of distributing them. There's no meaning to book production if we don't distribute them. Prabhupada pointed that out. I'm not producing these books just to sit on a shelf or just for us to read. Yes, you should read my books, but you have to distribute them to others. So Mother Gauri set that standard. Her gravity and her bravery will always be remembered. Gauri Devi Dasi Ki Jai.
Brigupati Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripasindhuvyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I also remember Mother Gauri from Brooklyn, the early 70s. I joined in 73. I think she joined 71 plus or minus. And I joined a little bit before Archita, and at that time she wasn't a legend. You know, she was kind of up and coming. I remember, you know, scores from her, like 19 big books or something like that, and Ramapad within Brahmacharya preaching to her. But I remember her as being very sincere and very determined. And I'll say more about that. But one thing I remember, my early relationship with her was always getting preached to. That was sort of what went on back in those days. If you were, the senior devotees preached to the junior devotees, and she was always preaching to me whenever I kind of gotten ear range of her earshot. You know, she'd always be preaching. I used to fill the lockers at Port Authority bus station, and that was one of the places where she would distribute. So, you know, I'd be there filling the lockers with the books, and she'd come and kind of, you know, spend 10, 15 minutes preaching to me and then get back out there and distribute. Once I had the good fortune, I was asked by Ramapad to drive her to Newark Airport. It was Thanksgiving, and it was probably 1973, and it was, you know, it was military. You know, they let them out for the holidays, so it was, you know, and we knew that in advance. So she went there, and it was a blizzard, and they canceled all the flights, and she had a heyday. she just went. I can't remember the numbers exactly. It was at least 75 Krishna books that she distributed, maybe more. And she was in bliss and ecstasy. I remember, you know, coming over to me a few times and telling me what was going on. She really plugged in. It was incredible. And so she, for me, is evidence of how the process works, because, you know, my early memory of her is not as some, you know, super duper kind of individual. I mean, she wasn't like, she was in a woman's body. She had some health issue even back then. I believe she was a bit older than some of us, you know, maybe 5, 10 years older. I can't remember exactly how many years, but, and, you know, it wasn't like she was like a Buddhimanta or Pragosh or Vaisheshika, you know, young athletic man. No, she was a woman, you know, with some health issues, and it didn't start off as a big distributor, but she was just determined and sincere, and she just kept at it. And she, you know, because she persevered like that, she really got the mercy. And, you know, like as I said, I remember being with her on that day. And then shortly after that, the press and the artists moved here to Los Angeles, so I lost contact with her. And but I remember I was traded to Australia in 1978, and I remember hearing about her. You know, you hear about the glorification of the devotees all over the world. So I remember hearing about, you know, Mother Gauri, and how she, not only, she kind of took it even beyond, she went from an ordinary distributor to like an empowered distributor, and then she took it to a next level, and she became an empowered leader, you know, within the Krishna consciousness movement, but particularly inspiring book distributors and a lot of the Madhajis. And I remember, you know, hearing this glorification about her and just kind of going, wow, that's like, you know, I was very inspirational, because, as I said, it really, for me, she's evidence of how the process works. She was just super sincere, super determined, persevered, and she got Prabhupada's mercy. She went from being like an ordinary book distributor to an empowered book distributor, from an empowered book distributor to like a, you know, like a book distribution acharya for, you know, devotees all over the world. So, Gauri Das, Ki Jai.
So, Iona Jat, Mataji. She's in back.
Hare Krishna. All glories to their lordships, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. So I was a householder when I came to New Dwarka with one little girl, Tulsi Devi, Dasi, and I met Mother Gauri. Woo! As a householder, that was intense. She was always guiding you. She always kept you on the straight and narrow path. And whenever you went on book distribution with her, I could not believe the look in her eyes, that sparkle, and the little slight smile. And as soon as she would meet your gaze, you were finished. If you were a wandering soul out there. And she would just grab you in like Krishna took you and gave you a big hug, and they could not escape her. And I was like, how did she do that? That sparkle, that slight smile, and then she would speak those words filled with honey about Krishna. It was like, I'll never forget it, ever. And then as I continued on with the Gurukula and other things, I was on my third child, and I was walking up the stairs in number 11 with my new baby, Neela Madhava, in my arms. And Mother Karta comes out. Oh, new baby? Do you know Mother Gauri passed away? And I was like, oh. So birth and death. I realized she wasn't even going to let me get a little glory on having this beautiful little soul. She's like, Mother Gauri, Mother Ionija, remember, birth and death. It's continuous. So all glories to Mother Gauri and all that she gave to all of us with the book distribution and her wonderful Radha Govinda deities. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you.
Hare Krishna. So I actually shared a room with her in the Henry Street Temple in Brooklyn, and I could say she was really austere. She was a little older than most of us. I just was silly and nonsense, and she wasn't. She was really strict, and she kind of took me under her wing, and I was really grateful because I didn't know anything at all, and she was like the representative of Prabhupada for me at that time, and in that such a neophyte stage, she kind of nourished the seed. So I am really grateful for her. When I think of Gauri, I could see a picture of someone who is very strong, a warrior lady. She was a fabulous example for all us young girls. She was so determined. She would do anything to serve Prabhupada. She was everything. She did everything. And I remember her trying to teach me how to even, in those days we did really small services when we first came to the temple, and she gave me the service to polish the brass in the basement of the Henry Street Temple. And if anybody's been there in the basement, they know that it's like hell on earth. It's dark, it's horrible. So that's what I did, and she taught me how to do it, and it was every day. And I loved it, and she made sure that I did a good job. And so I'm grateful to her, and she's an amazing woman, and I'm grateful for Savas, who has, and now everybody can appreciate this wonderful devotee of Prabhupada because of us and Tadit. And a good friend of mine, Vidya, who was there at the end, asked her what to do with the deities. And so they decided that Tadit would be the perfect person to take care of them. And so thank you very much, and Blai?
Hare Krishna. So I was actually there in the New York Temple when Gauri first joined, and I don't remember what the personal tragedy that had happened to her, but she was the saddest person I had ever seen in my life. She was just completely devastated. But she came to the temple and she started reading Prabhupada's books and following the program, and gradually, she became the devotee Gauri Dasi. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Sachitanmaya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Panchakalpaduruyasya, kripasindhuvyeva cha, patitanam pavanevyo, vaishnavevyo namo namaha. Namo Narayana Paripurna Gunachadharya, Vishuddha Vigraha Sadarya Purna Nirvana 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 Purna N So being a new devotee and distributing books at the airport is a challenge. I was totally overwhelmed, bewildered, hearing all these different sounds and seeing all these people passing by. But there it was, Mother Gauri. And it reminds me of Mother Teresa from Calcutta. And I thought, wow, I never seen someone so compassionate. But here she was, distributing Prabhupada's books. So she showed me that, she saw in me that I was totally bewildered. And she took out of her Sankirtan time in a very compassionate mood to rescue me because I was totally confused. So she said, do you realize that these people are one step to hell, and we are the ones here, by the order of the Guru and Lord Chaitanya, to save them from that? And I heard that, and I appreciate that, but still I couldn't have that conviction and that faith and determination that she had. So those qualities, that faith, conviction, determination, enthusiasm, is what it requires to spread Krishna consciousness. I was very, how do you say that, grateful for that, coming to me and give that time to me. I'll never forget that. Then another time, when she got sick and went to India and came back, we were having a big festival in Los Angeles. We call that the LA Streets Sing. We have thousands of people there. But at that time, we were distributing paraphernalia, something that I didn't like to do, but I just followed the authorities. So anyway, I'm mentioning that because we were about 15 or 20 devotees, but at one point, in the middle of thousands of people, I saw a big hardbound Gita. And I said, what is that? And then 10 minutes later, another hardbound Gita, too. And then keep doing my thing with the paraphernalia. Another hardbound Gita, and I thought, what's going on here? How come they didn't tell us that we can distribute books too? I could have been doing that. But anyway, then suddenly, far away, in the middle of all these people, I saw Mother Gauri. Easy to spot because she was wearing white. And I was like, oh my God, just see how strong determination she has. Another time, she said, see the BBT sign here? This BBT sign? I want you to take this sign, get a table, and distribute books. Would you do that? And I go, yes, ma'am. Yes, because she was very like a general. I said, yes, mom. She said, okay. So, yes, Mother Gauri, very, very determined, a lot of faith, conviction, and it was a source of inspiration for us. I'm very grateful that here in New Dwarka we had her for a few years before she went to India. Mother Gauri ki.
Yes,
Jai Haribol. Thank you, Balai Mata. I appreciate. It's true that in 1973, I was in New York, Henry Street Temple, Brooklyn, in the middle of hell, and we used to go to Harinam. I was on the Harinam party with Jai Sachinandan and Abhinanda, one leg, black body, and then many other devotees. And I wasn't a book distributor, just like was mentioned earlier. So I only had be able to go out all day on Harinam for 8 hours every day, well, Monday through Saturday. But then we'd hear about these book distributors that would go out to the Port Authority bus station. And there was Jadharani, Gauri, Tosan Krishna's first wife, Bhumi, and many others. And with Gauri, I remember is that Because in the New York City, this bus station, people are going 100 miles an hour walking. I mean, it's a high, a high mem, it just, people would go by so fast. So when we heard that all these big books are being distributed by Gauri and Jadharani, we were just amazed that they would have the ability and empowerment to be able to actually distribute these books. Because I remember that. Yeah, you were right, Mother Balai, that she always looked very sad. But in the end, she got Prabhupada's grace.
I'm from a very small temple in Mauritius. I joined in 1985. But somehow we had no internet, we had no phone, we had nobody going to India at that time. It was so poor, nobody was traveling. But somehow when Mother Gauri left her body in Vrindavan, we kind of, I don't know how, we got news of that. That she was one of the first disciples of Prabhupada to leave her body in Vrindavan, and we were like so amazed that, and what we heard, I don't know if it's true because news sometimes they get distorted on the way. We heard that Srila Prabhupada came to her dream and told her that she had cancer, and then she decided to go to Vrindavan and leave her body. So for us, young girls in the ashram, she was already like a hero, like a heroine for us. Like, it was such a perfect example and really like enthused us in our service to Srila Prabhupada. So that, and I'm so grateful I'm here today celebrating her. And I can't believe I'm here. So yeah, that's my experience, my remembrance of her.
Anyone else? We have a little bit of time left. Nakatma Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I never had any personal exchanges with Gauri Mataji, but in '73, when I was with the BBT party and Radha Damodar traveling party, we would frequent all these places, and whether it be Los Angeles, New York, Port Authority, or Chicago, and there would always be talk about Gauri. I remember seeing her distributed in Los Angeles, and I would think, because we would also go to these places, that it was such a challenge to distribute in these venues. And so my appreciation was that in these difficult places, and as you were mentioning earlier, and someone else also mentioned how she was also involved in different areas of service, it helped me to appreciate how important it is for a devotee to do the needful. That whether it be associating and instructing some younger disciple, or whether it be, or godbrother, godsister, or it be servicing the deities, or going out and preaching and Harinam, or associating with the conditioned souls and trying to give them some experience with Krishna consciousness, that for me it helped establish that in my services, that sometimes you just have to do the needful. And although it may be very challenging, with examples of her, or whether it be Vishnu Jana Swami or Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So many wonderful devotees, good examples for us to take encouragement from.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Radhanath Maharaj, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I came today to bow my head at the feet of Gauri Devi. A truly great soul who gave her life and passed from this world, absorbed in assisting Srila Prabhupada in sharing love for Krishna with the world. I never had the fortune of directly interacting with her. But those who have given their lives in this Krishna consciousness movement in such an exemplary, compassionate way as Gauri will always remain foundational inspiration for all of us. I am truly grateful to Devi and Swalas Prabhu and the entire New Dwarka community for having this festival every year and allowing us to share the devotion of Gauri Devi and to have darshan of her Ishtadev, Shri Radha Govinda. Where what better way would please her than what is happening today? A beautiful Guru Puja for Srila Prabhupada and her deities of Radha Govinda on the altar of Rukmini Dwarkadish to give their mercy to everyone. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Haribo. So anybody else would like to say anything? A few more minutes. I think it's important at this particular point just to kind of mention that Gauri Dasi was a very unique individual in her life and serving Srila Prabhupada. But I think an important thing that she did that was very important was that her depth of devotion to Srila Prabhupada. I think that's a very a unique attribute when there's a disciple that has this deep feeling, this overall desire just to please the spiritual master. And I think that was one of her, greatest qualities. Just on that principle, when we were offered the opportunity to worship Radha Govinda, we didn't know what to think, but we did it because we wanted to keep the memory of Gauri around. We wanted to keep that alive because she was such a nice devotee. And we felt really elated that we were given this opportunity. And so, as I was saying before, they do mean a lot to us. They've taken over our life, so to speak. It's inevitable, you can't avoid it. But I think that that devotion that she had and that she showed, that just like how Srila Prabhupada was, confronted with so many issues in life, and especially him passing away in Vrindavan, I think that Gauri really took it upon herself to glorify Srila Prabhupada in her own particular way, of sticking it out in Vrindavan, even though she had just a huge amount of pain and discomfort. in those particular days, they didn't have the facilities that we're used to in the Western world. If you go to the hospital today, if they have to drain fluid out of your body, they do it in a really, beautiful way, so to speak. You don't see anything. But at that particular time, when they were doing that to her, it's really kind of weird to say this, but I think you just get the picture. She was so determined that, she didn't really want to take painkillers. And they would drain the fluids from her body that they had to do because it's into like a bucket, just like a regular bucket. She'd just get on her side and they would just, get rid of the fluid. And that, you can just imagine what that was like. And even though she was going through all that, she refused to go anywhere. She stayed. And what was wonderful too was that at a particular point in the very beginning, when she was diagnosed, she was going to go to Vrindavan. She did. But in Vrindavan, she became healthy again. Somehow or other, there was a remission in her cancer. And so she felt very, enthusiastic. So she immediately got a ticket, came back to America. And as soon as she got back to the U.S., she bought a motorhome, or got a motorhome. And she started traveling around the country with several Matajis. And they would be doing Harinam Kirtan distribution. And they dropped in Denver at that time. We were living in Denver, and so it was incredible. She said, yes, I'm cured, I'm happy, Krishna's mercy. But then not too long after that, she became ill again. And at that particular point, she pretty much surrendered to leaving this world in Vrindavan. So she went to Vrindavan, and she was determined to stay there and go back home, back to Godhead from Vrindavan, which is really incredible in those particular days. That was, for us, that was a unique situation, amazing. So we all felt we all felt actually ecstatic for her, because it was such a wonderful example of a devotee and how they followed the instruction of the spiritual master in their life, and even at the time of death, just like their spiritual master. So we want to remember her determination and her dedication to Srila Prabhupada. And that is her uniqueness, her dedication, I think, her devotion. And that was her success story in life. So hopefully we can come to that particular level. That could be our success story, that we're completely surrendered to the spiritual master, serve him to the end, and follow his example. Okay. I'm just going to read this very quickly. This is coming to the end. Vijaya Devi Dasi, 1 year ago, this is back then, when Gauri first came to Vrindavan, she was very strong and heroic. At that time, she received so much association from the God brothers and God sisters and a good Ayurvedic medical treatment, and she appeared to be miraculously cured. Gauri often said she was grateful to Krishna for this gift of 1 year, as it enabled her to return to the West and finish all the things that were undone. When she returned here to Vrindavan in November, she wanted to live, but she had so many plans for preaching, and therefore thought of death. There would be difficulty for her. It would be very difficult for her. Finally, about 3 weeks before her passing, Gauri traveled to the cancer specialist in Delhi, where they explained frankly to her that she was in her final stages. Each day she was noticeably weaker. She spoke quietly of many things, but mostly she was now anxious for death and prayed to Krishna to make her suffering short, to quickly finish her suffering and material body. Gauri's greatest qualification in the eyes of the devotees was her sincere determination to please Prabhupada in his service to Krishna by distributing books to the fallen souls. All of Gauri's service was marked by this incredible determination. Now, with this same determination, she turned to the business of dying as Prabhupada had instructed. She often spoke of Prabhupada's perfect example of how to leave the material body. It was her desire to leave her body while preaching, as he had done. Quote, "My achievement has come back has come from hard work, she said several times. So, several times Gauri asked who was present when she was lying there, and she was pleased to hear each name. At one point, she asked to sit at the end of the bed. She said, I want to put my feet on the flat floor, see who is there, and concentrate my mind on Srila Prabhupada. As she was very weak, she began to shake uncontrollably, even with her fully supporting her, even with our fully supporting her body. So we quickly laid her back again. Then she asked that we lower her to the floor. She said she was already so uncomfortable she wouldn't mind. From this vantage point, the assembled devotees could see her better. The kirtan consisted mainly of the devotees chanting in response to Prabhupada on the continuously playing happening album. Dr. Nartam came and said, 1 hour more, end of quote. She was still conscious. We read to her from Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita about Prabhupada's passing, and this consoled her greatly. Bhaktisiddhanta Das brought remnants from the last water Srila Prabhupada drank before leaving this world and gave this to her. We brought her deities to stand close to her, and she studied them tearfully. We took photographs and asked her to smile for her friends in Los Angeles, which she did. Then finally she asked to be rolled over on her back. At that point she opened her eyes very wide and dryly said, "This is very intense." She slowly repeated the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra 2 more times. Gauri then left her body on June 5th, surrounded by devotees, loudly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Gauri Dasi Ki Jai. All right, thank you very much. So we want to serve out Krishna Prasadam on her behalf. So we request all of you to please, we're going to eat here in the temple room. We're going to do it old style, way back like in the 70s. So we're going to all line up in rows here, and then we're going to have devotees come and serve you out. We need about 5 or 6 more devotees that'll help with the distribution. So if we could have some devotees volunteer. Yes, you can just come forward here. Before we sit down though, if I could just have your attention for a moment, I would like to thank those devotees that did all the cooking and hard work while we were here.